Hello and welcome to this training session on Oracle License Audits. I'm Fredrik Philipson. With me, I have Morten Andersen.
Hello.
Hi. And let's see, where's everybody from? I can see we have someone here in Czech, in Prague. Hello.
I was talking about Prague the other day. I have never been. Sunny Finland. That sounds nice.
Italy, Sam Expert. Hello, Anne. Nice to see you again. Hello, Claudio. Nice to see you. Hello, Alex. I don't know what that is, that number here. Hello, Octavio. Hello, Andrew. How are you? What we're going to do is we're going to do our mission video for 2 minutes. That allows us to get a bit ready for the training. And when we come back, we are ready to start.
Great.
We started working with Oracle licensing over 15 years ago, and we've always been passionate about our work with licensing and contracts. Back when we started working at Oracle, we realized very quickly that Oracle had an advantage. They knew all the contracts and licensing rules, all while its customers were in a disadvantage with limited access to the very same information. We want to level the playing field by changing that. We often get asked, why do you share? Our philosophy is pretty simple, and it's always been, if you do good things will happen. To us, there are two groups of people out there. One group who will watch our videos, attend our training, and use that knowledge to better manage their Oracle software, and that's great. But there will also be people who need our Oracle licensing expertise. It's a win-win.
Oracle licensing is challenging and difficult. Almost no company in the world is able to stay compliant with their Oracle software licenses. But there are a few companies out there that have succeeded in remaining compliant with Oracle. We are obsessed with finding those companies, speak with them to understand how were they successful, and then we want to teach it to everybody else. The challenge with learning about Oracle licensing has always been that the few who had the knowledge did not want to share it with others. We want to be different. We want to share knowledge that we have, whatever knowledge that we gain, so that others can benefit from this knowledge as well. That is our mission.
And we're back. Hello, everybody. We have some more people joining us. Hello, Dom. Hello, Miguel. Hello, Pedro. Hello, Patrick. Hello, Jana. Nice to see you again. And hello, Kirstein from Houston, Texas. That must be, early morning, I think. And hello, Vinaya. Welcome to this session about Oracle License Audits. This is the first session out of 2 sessions. And we will be talking today about how Oracle is selecting customers for audits, what should you be doing when you get the audit letter from Oracle, how to prepare, how to react, what to negotiate with Oracle, because that's an opportunity for you to negotiate. We will also give you some areas that's important to look at if you want to do an internal audit before Oracle starts their official audit. And in the next session, which I think it's in 1 week or 2 weeks, I don't keep track of that very well, we will talk about what is going on in the audit itself, how should you manage it, and then what do you do at the end if there's a report and there's a shortfall. So we have divided up the audit defense into 2 sessions. And with that, I'll leave it to hand it over to Morten, who's going to take the first part.
Thank you, Fredrik. So, Oracle audits, everybody's favorite topic. It's just one of these areas that especially with Oracle, it's interesting. Everything is changing. Oracle's keep changing the rules of engagement. But today we're going to talk about some of the basics, so you have an understanding of what an Oracle audit actually is, and so you can go into an audit much more or better prepared than anything before. So let me see here. So what we talked about, we're all about sharing knowledge. So anyone who wants to join us, follow us on LinkedIn, follow us on YouTube. We have our event groups. We share all kinds of licensing knowledge. That's what it's all about. Sharing knowledge enables us to be better and better manage your Oracle licensing state. And well, in case of audit, better defend or get into an audit defense in a proper manner. So let's start with the audit clause, because basically that's where we always like to start with the contracts. What's in the contracts? That's the first place you have to go and look. What did you actually sign up for when you bought your Oracle software? So with the Oracle contracts, you have your standard Oracle ordering document, you have your Oracle Master Agreement, the OMA, and it's in the OMA that you're going to find your Oracle contract, and the OMA controls, or is your ordering document is signed under a specific OMA. So that's the relationship between the ordering document and the OMA. We talked early on about how you could have special terms and conditions on an ordering document level, but when it comes to the Oracle Audit Clause, typically you will find it in the OMA. It's very few who has any changes to the Oracle Audit Clause. So here it is, and we're going to be talking about two different audit clauses because Oracle actually made changes to the audit clause relatively recently, and we're going to look at that and what that change is all about. But for most of the Oracle customers out there, this is most likely the audit clause that they have signed up for. And basic says that 45 or upon 45 days written notice, Oracle may audit your use of the operating system, integrated software audits, and so on. You agree to pay within 30 days of written notification any fees applicable to your use of the operation, and so on. I'm not going to read it through every bit in detail for you at this. You can read it yourself. But a couple of things that's important to point out. First of all, and this is something we need to mention because this is a common area we see in most audit situations, is that the Oracle customer is always or very often very eager to comply with Oracle. So they are very eager to respond and get into the audit at first possible go. And it's almost like they want to please the audit team, so very quickly to respond to the audit letter instead of actually using the time they have. So it says on 45 days written notice, you can actually go in and or that's what you had, the time you have before you actually need to reply to Oracle. And what we do recommend very often is always spend that time to get an understanding of what are you getting into here. So another thing to notice in this audit clause is it doesn't mention anything about that you have to run the Oracle audit scripts or any other tools in your environments. And what it also says, and we're going to come back to that because that, of course, is very important because Oracle likes to use their tools to collect data as a part of the audit. But we're going to come back to that. What it also says is that it may not or shall not unreasonably interfere with your business operations. And of course, what is unreasonably? That, of course, is up to you to decide what is reasonable, at least to some extent. And again, if you have important business to do and you cannot use time and effort on an Oracle audit, of course you need to push it. And that evaluation you have to make internally. And Oracle, typically, if you come back to Oracle and you give them an explanation why you cannot respond to a certain audit within a certain time frame, because it might be end of year for you, you might be rolling out some big changes within your IT organization. It could be many other things. Oracle will listen to that in most cases. So keep that in mind and make sure that you actually have the time and resources to respond to the audit and engage in the audit in a proper way. The worst thing you can get into is basically an audit where you don't have the resources, you don't have the time needed to respond to the audit and work with the audit team. It turns very often into a disaster. And if you don't manage to control the audit, Oracle will control it for you, and that will not end up in your favor. So this is the old clause. We just talked about it. So it was basically up till 2019 that we saw the new clause coming into the documents. And what it's important to notice here is that there might be a change depending on the entitlements that you have within your Oracle estate. So just be aware of that there are different audit clauses out there. And of course, depending on which entitlement, which auditing document are designed under which OMA, you might be on the old clause, you might be on the new clause. Just be aware of that, because there's quite a significant change in the audit clause, as we will see. So this is the new clause. And this is whenever you are in a new OMA, and again, it's very much like the old clause. It's again 45 days written notice. You cannot unreasonably, or it may not unreasonably interfere with your normal business operations. But what becomes a change to the audit clause and is interesting in this case is that Oracle starts to include the use of audit tools. So such assistance shall include, but shall not be limited to, the running of Oracle data measurement tools on your servers and providing the resulting data to Oracle. So here, they clearly mark out that they will use Oracle data measurement tools, and we're going to have a look a little bit later what that means. But they want to go onto your servers and run their tools, and you have to share data back to Oracle. They go on then, of course, and mention a non-disclosure, which is basically a put into the agreement. That, of course, is it's something that Oracle is adding to the agreement, and you can only speculate the reason for it, but a lot of audits has always started out with with Oracle or the Oracle customers asking for non-disclosure agreement. And I think clearly Oracle wants to bridge that and make it much more easy for them to avoid that handling of non-disclosure documents back and forth between partners, Oracle and the customers. So they're trying to make this much more easy by adding it into the contracts. So that's basically the change. So adding in that Oracle will be allowed to use their data measurement tools. So here are the 4 takeaways that you need to consider. You need to run the Oracle audit tools, the measurement tools. Clearly, that puts leverage on Oracle that they can go in and now deploy their tools and use whatever data that is going to generate. Now, of course, what you need to consider is that what audit clause are you under, and with a mix of licenses, and probably many of you will be or could be in a situation where you have two different audit clauses. What are you supposed to go by? Now that, of course, if you retroactively are in a situation where you're on the old clause, well, those licenses will be under the old clause. So this is absolutely something you need to consider if, or in the case of an audit, which clause are you operating under? If there is a mix, which one should you be going by? And then, of course, there is the NDA. And as I talked about just before, it seems to me that this NDA is used as a way to really simplify the process. And in many cases, the NDA is, of course, something that you can't just go in and accept an NDA. You need to consider if that NDA, of course, is applicable and the right type of NDA for your specific company and your specific situation. So don't just accept whatever NDA Oracle has included into their contracts. They're trying to simplify things here. There's no reason for you to simplify it if especially this part of the process, if it's not right for you. Absolutely no reason. And then, of course, going forward, so if you're on the old audit clause and you are in a situation where you need to renew your OMA, we, of course, recommend you to keep the old audit clause because it is a better audit clause for you. It puts you at a stronger position where you don't have, or at least you can argue against not running the audit tools in a much better fashion. So now we're going to talk a little bit about who performs the audits and how are customers selected, how are Oracle customers selected for audits. So first of all, for a long time, the Oracle audits were done by Oracle's in-house audit organization, also called LMS. Now, that changed years back, and Oracle started to bring in partners, and a number of partners out there, Oracle-approved audit partners, are conducting audits on behalf of Oracle. Now, it's important to notice that you have no contractual obligation to engage in a partner-led audit. Oracle would let you know that they would like to use a partner in case of an audit, but you have no contractual obligation to have that partner running that audit. So you can say no. And in certain cases, clearly, that could be no audit at all. In other cases, you will have Oracle coming back and potentially run it themselves. One thing to consider here is sort of the economics or the dynamics behind the scene that's going on, because Oracle is, of course, letting their partners take the type of audits that are considered maybe not as valuable, not high maintenance or high volume type of customers. They want to control that bit themselves. So very often it's really lower tier customers from an Oracle perspective. That can still be very, very large companies, but lower tier Oracle customers are often being pushed on to the audit partners. And we see these partners, they operate basically worldwide. In Europe, it's 7-8 is one of those partners that we see very often. We also see in for example, in Asia, that it used to be that the audit partners were software resellers as well, and not they were not engaged in the audit on a pure audit basis. But what we're seeing a tendency of now is that there are partners coming in that is pure audit partners. So what they do is basically just run audits. So we see cases of that as well, and that's a new tendency in this space. So you can decline these partner-led audits and just be aware of that they have a economic incentive to go in and run these audits. So one of the things in terms of whenever there is an audit conducted, there's a lot of speculation. What is actually happening? Are they going to come on site? What are they going to do? And just to clear out what Oracle will do, they will certainly not come on site. That's very rare that an Oracle LMS or audit person will be on site. They will certainly not be knocking on the door to your data center and come in and start deploying your script. All that is done remotely, and they don't have tools where they would go in and so discovery tools where they would go in and scan every environment in your data center. What they do have is an in-house development tool or developed tool that you can deploy on the servers where you have Oracle products running. That's to the extent that they are picking up data and taking data back and analyzing. And it will be you who will be doing that data gathering. So Oracle is limited in understanding your deployment situations to the extent that you know what is being deployed within your data centers. So for example, if you don't know about a server or two servers somewhere in the data center which there is actually Oracle products on and running, well, if you don't report that back, Oracle wouldn't know it. So it's limited. The audit process is limited in that sense. So here is an overview of the different types of audit. We talked about Oracle's in-house audit, which is the Oracle Audit team. We talked about the partner-led audit, which is typically resellers. There will be pure audit partners as well, but typically they're first of all Oracle partners, but also resellers of Oracle software. And you have the opportunity to decline that type of audits. Of course, there can be a situation also, if you have a strong relationship with that particular partner, that you might want to consider to do the audit with that particular partner. An important thing to understand here is that when the partner is involved in the audit, so it's a partner-led audit, it's not the partner who's doing the number crunching. The number crunching is happening still at Oracle. It will be Oracle people doing the actual analysis. And we have seen some cases where Oracle partners at some point actually leave the audit entirely and basically hands it back over to Oracle, and they will then finish up the audit. Then there's a third audit, which that's really the tricky one. It's the soft audit. This is a sales initiated type of audit. It's not an audit. It's not a formal audit. But what salespeople often do is they make it look like it's a formal audit. And those, they're happening all the time across Oracle customers in the entire world. So this is a very well-known Oracle sales practice, and it's certainly something you need to be aware of. Often it comes in the form of a letter from sales. They're asking you for specific information. It could be that they wanted to fill out some spreadsheets with the Oracle products that you're using. So basically, it's salespeople requesting information and digging around for potential compliance issues that they can use to engage a sales opportunity. So it's basically a sales lead exercise, generating exercise. So be very aware of those. They happen all the time. And compared to the Oracle Audit organization, the Oracle sales organization is vastly outnumbered them many times over, and you will definitely see sales doing audit style behavior. And you can get quite far in those processes without realizing that you are not in a real audit. Our recommendation is don't share information right off the bat with these. Don't engage in these types of requests. Understand before you share any information with any Oracle sales team. So that's good to know. So Oracle sends you an audit notification proposing that the partner is representing Oracle doing the Oracle audit. Now, Oracle partners, they don't make any money on the actual audit. What they make their money on is, it can be two things. They can either resell your licenses. That was at least a very common model, that they would resell the licenses to cover whatever gap they would find. Or Oracle also has a market model where they would where you go in and identify a potential opportunity, and as a partner, and if something happened on that particular customer where you've identified an opportunity, Oracle will reward you for that. So that could also be a way for an Oracle partner to generate revenue on a specific audit case, but they're not paid to conduct the actual audit. Now, again, you can decline this. Oracle will, of course, or maybe they'll try to wiggle their way out of it, but you will be able to negotiate and refuse going through an audit partner because you haven't signed up for this contractually. And then, of course, there can be the upside that you don't get into any audit at all because Oracle has several other on the list before you. There's a reason why they push these potential audit candidates to partners. So now we're going to talk a little bit about how Oracle is actually selecting customers for audit. First of all, it's not a random process. It's based on suspicions of non-compliance. And there's a great deal of customer history added to this because some Oracle customers just have a bad history with being constantly caught in compliance issues. And if you're one of those, well, then you can almost certainly be sure that Oracle pretty soon will, if you had an audit a few years back and it paid very well to Oracle, well, they're probably going to be back again to just check to see, because typically with certain Oracle customers, there is a sort of a tendency and a history that goes towards Oracle ending up making a lot of money on their audits. So it's not random, and ultimately it's the sales reps that are deciding who is going to get into an audit or not. They have a big say in terms of who are selected and who is getting into audit. So they can nominate customers for audits, but they can also veto the audit, and the Oracle Audit organization will be very aligned with what the sales rep is intending to do on a particular customer. So, for example, if there is a big deal about to happen on a certain customer, it doesn't make any sense for Oracle to audit that particular customer. They might as well push it off until the deal has been signed and everything is okay. So, and that's exactly why the audit organization aligns with the salespeople. So it's all about who will generate revenue for Oracle. It's not a science, but there's a number of factors that goes into it that you will see in a lot of audit cases. So how can you avoid being audited? Well, if you have the opportunity to show Oracle that you are in control of your licensing, well, basically entering any discussion with Oracle, being well prepared on the licensing questions, showing the sales team, showing the technical team, whoever is involved in the communication between you and Oracle, if you show Oracle that you know what you're talking about, sometimes even correcting the Oracle salespeople, I'll tell you, there will be plenty of opportunities to do that. Well, then Oracle will clearly get the feeling that you are informed, you understand what your licensing situation is, and they will be much, much less likely to engage with you on an audit. And that, of course, goes again if you are in an audit situation and there is basically no or very, very little compliance to talk about. Well, again, Oracle won't be coming back to you because basically it's a waste of their time and money. It's better spent somewhere else where the opportunity is much higher. So here we have basically the two processes that are happening internally in Oracle when they nominate customers for an audit. So first, the first process is that you have your sales rep and nominating a specific customer to LMS. So they simply bring out, the salesperson pick out a number of customers, one or two, it could be even more, and then goes in, you discuss, or the salespeople discuss that together with Oracle, the Oracle's audit organization, they approve, and then the audit notification letters goes out. Then the second process is that the Oracle audit organization, so LMS, they have a list of companies that they want to audit. So they picked out a number of customers. This list is not random selected. It has, first of all, any activity. So it could be merger and acquisition activities. If they know about that, well, it's an obvious candidate for an audit. They might have old metrics. That's pretty much a good indication of being in the vicinity of an audit, because old metrics often means compliance problems. And then again, they're going to be looking into the audit history. How many years since the last audit? What happened in the last audit? Was there any revenue to be generated for Oracle? If there was, well, clearly Oracle is going to be coming back to you. Then LMS shares this list with sales, and then they, in combination, agrees to nominate the different customers. So they pick out from the list who is going to be the ones that they're going to be auditing, and ends up with the sales giving their blessing, because they are the ones in contact with the customer. They know what is going on, and they well, they can say, well, we don't have any deal activities. There's nothing. They don't. There's nothing to push against us moving forward with an audit. Well, then they go out, and then the letter goes out. And what's most common here is that sales, Oracle sales, they like to be in the background whenever there is an audit, or at least maybe not, that might not be the right term, but they don't want to look like the person who initiated the audit. They want that to be something that happens automatically, or it's out of their control. And they're just there to simply facilitate and help you through the audit, and of course make a bit of money at the end of the audit if there is any compliance situations. So sales, they have very often a way to sort of engage without sort of, but we can't do anything, it's not up to us, it's not our decision to make, everything needs to be approved. They very much, they don't want to be the one to blame for the actual audit, while the truth of the matter is that they are very much engaged in every step of the way. So here, 13 most common reasons for being audited by Oracle. So we just listed some of the things that you should be aware of. So first of all, any old license metrics. If you're using NUPs, especially in production environments, that's also a giveaway for potential compliance problems. If there's been any mergers, any acquisition activities, that typically is also something that needs some sort of a license adjustment. If they didn't hear from you, well, you probably is pretty high on the audit list in terms of making changes to contracts and so on. If you made a large hardware refresh, that is typically also associated with a refresh in the licensing demand. You didn't knock on the door to the Oracle sales department, well, maybe there is some compliance situation to look at there. You haven't been audited for more than 3 years, yeah, maybe time. If the last audit was a good audit from an Oracle perspective, they found a lot of compliance, well, clearly they want to be back to audit you again, because they know from history that in many cases this is just a gift that keeps on giving, or gift that keeps on giving. If you have Oracle EBS, but you don't have full use licensing for the technology underneath, this is a very common compliance problem for EBS customers. So this is an area where Oracle likes to audit, and they know there's always something to be found. If Oracle Sales knows that you are using virtualization technologies, it's just one of those areas that again is very often a big audit problem for a lot of Oracle customers. So especially VMware, we see that again and again. And Oracle Sales, of course, knows of this, and it's a topic they would love to discuss with you if you're running VMware and Oracle databases in the same environment or other technology product. If you've logged, and this might sound like a little bit more outlandish, but if you logged a support ticket with Oracle, where someone in your technical team are describing issues that might involve Oracle products which you don't have a license for, would sales pick up on that? Yes, they would. Sometimes they do that. So be careful. If you decide not to accept a deal or any sort of cloud solution or any offering that Oracle will put on the table. And here, what we're trying to say, typically when there is a build-up to a large deal, Oracle sales are often deeply involved, and many cases there will be forecast made on potential deals being made on a specific customer. Now, combining that knowledge with the letdown of not realizing revenue on a particular customer, on a particular account, can sometimes put Oracle or push certain customers into an audit. If you have a new sales rep, that can very much so be a way for that new sales rep to initiate audits. Coming into new accounts can be very difficult for Oracle sales reps. Many Oracle sales reps don't have a tight or don't share a lot of information with their accounts. They're not fully aligned with accounts. They don't have much talk time with decision makers within an account. Well, then one of the ways to circumvent that or to bridge that will be to conduct an audit. For certain, you will be talking to that particular client if you're an Oracle salesperson. It's going to happen no matter what. Declining to renew your ULA, that could very much lead to an Oracle audit. The renewal on the ULA is already in the pipeline. Would be a potentially big deal for Oracle, and the fact that Oracle knows that Oracle ULAs often are mirrored with compliance issues. That's a dead giveaway that there is something to gain there by running the Oracle audit. And of course, as we talked about, if you were incompliant or non-compliant the last time, well, then there is a higher risk that they're gonna do that, or you will be non-compliant again. And well, why not run another audit then? And then, of course, and this goes back to your ability to handle sales talks or discussions or communications with Oracle. If you somehow are leaving doubts about your capabilities to manage your Oracle license estate, there are things that are not really well considered, or it's something that sort of leaves a blank or a gray area open in any discussions with Oracle when it comes to licensing, that will also be a potential giveaway. Certainly the Oracle salespeople will be sitting and thinking, I think there's something going on there. And they might very well start speculating on just how much that would be if it turned into an audit. So here are a couple of strategies that you can use to avoid getting selected for an Oracle audit. So first of all, making sure that Oracle believes that you're compliant, showing your capabilities, showing that you have a good software asset management process in place, you have the tools and the people to keep your licensing in check. Clearly, if Oracle is knocking on the door and they get the feeling that you know what you're doing, there are many other fish in the seas where their time is much, much better spent on Oracle. Then there's the best friend strategy, where we see basically customers buying their way out of solution audit situation by continuous buying from Oracle. Now, you can do this in a number of ways. It also really depends on your relationship with Oracle, but this is, of course, something that you can engage in, and we see this especially with larger companies that sometimes is continuing to renew agreements they might not really have any need of. So that strategy works to some extent, but it will eventually end bad or poorly to some extent. It will end in an audit. That is what most often happens. Entering a Oracle ULA or perpetual ULA, again, we know that whenever customers are in ULAs, when they're within ULAs or in large frame agreements, typically Oracle won't audit within the agreement. They will audit when you exit the agreement. So that's what is happening with those types of situations. So here are some of it's exercise time. So you can answer in the chat if you want to, but I'm just gonna read out, and I'm not gonna sort of sit and check the chat. So who performs Oracle audits? Is it answer A, KPMG, Deloitte, or is it Oracle LMS and Oracle Audit Partners? Yeah, it's correct. We got most here answering B. That's absolutely correct. It's Oracle LMS and the Oracle Audit Partners. Could you add the software investment advisories organization to this list? I don't know, but you probably should be aware of it. That's the new, well, not audit organization from Oracle, but at least the advisory organization from Oracle that is basically made of former auditors. So beware of that. Can you decline a partner audit? Is the answer A, no, Oracle decides, or is the answer B, yes, you can. Oracle partners earn money on reselling licenses, so it's not an objective audit. And I think, yes, I already see a lot of Bs, which is good. Yes, you can decline it. You don't have any contractual obligations to go in and run a partner-led audit, which is nice. It's good knowledge. Just say no. How often do Oracle audit its customers? Is it A, every 5 years, or B, every 3 years? Now this can, of course, be a little bit different from client to clients, but if we talk average, so what we like to say is every 3 years. That is a good rule of thumb, I think, to apply when you are talking about Oracle audits. In certain cases, it's very, very seldom it happens, of course. Who at Oracle selects customers for audit? Is it LMS only, answer A, or is the answer B? Officially, it's LMS, but indirectly and unofficially, it's done together with sales. I'm just checking here. Yeah, I see a lot of Bs. That's right. The answer is B. So it's officially it's LMS, but of course they are working very much in collaboration with sales. It's the only thing that really makes sense inside or internally in Oracle. If I'm audited, will Oracle come to my data center? No, they'll ask you to run their tools, so their data collection tools. Or is it answer B? Yes, they will always come to my data center. Yeah. No, so yeah, the answer is A. They will ask you to run the tools. They will not be knocking on your door, coming into your data center, having some IT technician ready with the scripts. That's not going to happen. You're going to be running anything, if anything needs to be run on your data centers. Which of these events are likely to trigger an audit? Is it answer A, I terminated my support agreement or moved to third-party support? Or is it answer B, I tell Oracle that we have no new projects where there is a sales opportunity. So there's no new license sales, there's no cloud opportunities. basically there's no talking to Oracle. Is it A or B? Yeah. Well, I can see with A, it seems very appealing. And as a rule of thumb, canceling support does not automate an audit. Customers are canceling Oracle support all the time. If Oracle were to audit all the customers who are canceling support, they would have a much, much larger Oracle audit organization. So it's a little bit of a mind trick. Don't automatically think that a move or cancellation of support or move to third-party support means that you're going to be audited. That being said, of course, there can be a risk associated with it if you move to other support providers. No, in this case, what often triggers an audit if there's no activities on a specific account, because the reason is simple. It's all about generating business. The audit is an opportunity generation type of machine. It's all about generating revenue on clients that are not about to go into a new project that will require any license sales or cloud sales. So if you're basically a dead customer to the Oracle salespeople, well, why not just audit you? Simplified, but that's really how it is. Which of these events are likely to trigger an audit? Is it A, you have all licensing metrics or user-based licensing, or is it answer B, you have in the past merged with another large company? Yeah. But there's some, yeah. Yeah, but they can both be triggering audit. I would say B is probably much more likely to trigger it, but both of them can absolutely trigger an audit. I received an email from Oracle saying I should fill in an OSW. Do I need to corroborate? Is it answer A? Yes, you need to comply with the Oracle email, whoever sends it. Or is it answer B? No, this sounds like a sales review. There's no contractual obligation to cooperate with Oracle. And yes, so these types of emails are they're happening all the time. Oracle sales like to mimic Oracle auditors. They do this because Oracle customers, they respond very well to it. It's a great way to generate opportunities for Oracle sales. But you don't have to comply. Basically, you can just push back on it or simply ignore it. It's a sales review. It's their way to generate opportunities. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the Oracle measurement tools, and just to give you an understanding of what goes into the Oracle, what type of tools that Oracle makes use of as a part of the Oracle audit process. So, of course, at the center stage, when in most of the Oracle audits, we are talking about Oracle scripts. And Oracle scripts is a collection of scripts that goes across different product segments. It goes across the technology, so the database is probably the most mature products that you can review from a script perspective. And then you have the middleware, the scripts for middleware, and you have scripts for some of the applications like e-business suite. Now, scripts is just for the main products within Oracle. There are lots of products which Oracle cannot review using scripts. They would basically be declaration-based audits if you were to be audited on these products. So it's basically the bread and butter products from Oracle that Oracle has scripts for. So it's going to be the database, it's going to be middleware, and it's going to be e-business suite. That's really the core, and probably 90%, 95% of all the audits. However, of course, with anything else, there's limitations. So there are licensing metrics that Oracle cannot measure with their tools. So you would have certain, like employee users, would be something that Oracle scripts won't be able to pick up. Now, as we talked about in the Oracle Audit Clause, we saw that there was a change between, well, Oracle asking you just to share data or be cooperative in an audit, and then we saw the new Audit Clause where they specifically ask you to run their data measurement tools. And this is really what it comes down to. Should you run it? Should you not run it? If you ask Oracle, you're not going to get a choice. Oracle LMS, the Oracle Audit organization, wants to run the tools. So they have a process for this. They are familiar with this process. They like the process. They're very good at this process. So they want you to run the tools. It fits in to the overall system. It is what generates revenue for Oracle. So should you run it? Well, it can be used as a proof if you're using unlicensed software. These tools might pick up usage that you had no idea of. So it is really something that you need to be aware of. And also, when Oracle comes in with the data measurements tools or the script, they will pick up, in many cases, on a broad range of products, sometimes products that is not within the scope of the audit, and potentially can be drawn in as a scope if you're not careful. So that's things that you need to be aware of and need to be consider whenever you're engaging in any type of audit engagement with Oracle. Now, if you are in a situation as considering these scripts, if you could say no, you could say yes. What could clearly Oracle wants you to say yes and go on and do these things. But if you said no, if you are not willing to really run the tools, how do you refuse Oracle? Well, some of the things you need to consider is, of course, security. What type of data is being collected? That's very commonly things that needs to be considered in any audit situation. Why it's being collected, who is going to have access to it, and where is it going to be shared. So in all the Oracle audits, unless you are pressing against it, the data is going to be shared with the Romanian team, the audit team sitting in Romania, where they're going to be processing and making the audit reports. So that's one of the things that you need to consider. Should you allow that data to be, for example, transferred outside of whatever country you are in as an Oracle customer? It will probably go through Romania. So things like that you need to consider. And of course, if you push back on Oracle, even though you might not have an Oracle or contractual obligation to it, are you just creating more problems for yourself? Pushing back on the Oracle audit process, will that really put you in a bad situation? And that's, of course, something you need to consider. Are there relevant and valid reasons not to run scripts in your data center? Absolutely so. You need to consider those in any given situation. So the LMS collection tools is basically a set of scripts, but outside of this, the LMS collection tool that will pick up data from your data centers, all your servers, there's going to be a lot of communication. So it's not just you running the tool and then basically the data collection and the audit is over. Oracle is going to come back to you with a report. That's not how it works. There's going to be all kinds of follow-up information. If you're running VMware, Oracle wants to get an understanding of what type of virtual infrastructure you are running it on. There's going to be questionnaires. They're going to be asking all sorts of questions as a part of the overall audit process. Just be aware of that it's not just them running a data collection tool and then everything is done. No, there's going to be a lot of questions to basically help Oracle to establish an understanding of your actual situation. How are you consuming your Oracle software? And that process can be, if you're not aware of it and you're not well organized in your replies to Oracle, that process can lead to a lot of misunderstandings, which can lead to a lot of problems at the end of the audit. So be aware of that there's, when it comes to data collection, there's lots of additional information going into the process. Now, one of the things that we've been talking about, and Oracle is to some extent promoting, and certainly SAM tool vendors are also promoting, is that there are tools out there which has been, or tooling providers that have received a verification from Oracle LMS. And what does that mean? Well, it means that you can use the tool to collect data and which you can hand over to Oracle. However, be aware of there are certain limitations to it. It's not a process where you just hand over a report to Oracle and then if the tool says you're compliant, you're going to be compliant. That's not how it works. Oracle team is still going to be running their tools on the data, and there's still going to be a lot of follow-up information, and there will be data that these verified tools simply does not capture, as it would be in any case with Oracle software. So don't just rely on the data that you get from an Oracle verified LMS tool or what the SAM tools that has received this verification from Oracle LMS. Be aware of that there's certainly situations where you can have large compliance risk that is not picked up by the tool. Now this goes primarily for the database, Oracle middleware and other Oracle products are excluded from this list. So. But still, beware of it. Tools are great. They are great to maintain control and help you automate large part of the software asset management process. However, you cannot rely on it entirely, especially not in an audit situation. So, well, Oracle says that you must run their audit tools. And so they have their in-house script, the LMS collection tools. Your Oracle contract says nothing about running the Oracle scripts. So what should you do? Well, have a talk with an Oracle expert and understand what is your actual situation. What is your current situation with your current Oracle estate before you go into any negotiations with Oracle? So have that opportunity to review your situation and enter that type of negotiation much better prepared with a much better understanding of your actual situation before you engage with any or into any negotiations with Oracle on this. Basically, if you don't have any risk and you understand that, there's no risk of running the tools, and you have a much better situation managing your Oracle relationship going forward. I think it's time for a break. This is the first part here.
Okay, great. I think there's an echo here.
Oh, I'm going to cut it off.
We are a little bit behind schedule, so we will start in 2 minutes, 5 minutes past the hour mark. If anyone have any questions, you can ask them now and we can try to answer them. Before, there was someone here is asking, Shraddha, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. We're talking about SAM verified tools for Oracle, and I think it's great if you have one, but it's only great if you have the ability to analyze the script output underneath. The tools can do database, and they get the script from Oracle, but they are often wrong. It could be 30% of the Oracle database that sometimes can be incorrectly analyzed by Flexera, ServiceNow, Aspera, these SAM verified tools. That's why it's really great, because we know how to analyze the script output, because we can then, if you're one of those customers that have this tool, you can then look at the raw output under the tool before Aspera or Flexera have analyzed it, and have a look at what are the licenses required. That's the big benefit. And I often say that if the SAM tool vendors, they should be offering script analysis training for their customers, so they can actually analyze the raw output underneath the tool. That would be a great value. Let me see if I can. Kartik, next part, is that today or is it next week? Today, I'm going to talk about the audit process itself. I'm going to give a lot of tips and tricks for how you can delay the audit, counter the audit, what are the quickest things that you should be looking at if you receive an Oracle audit letter. That for today. I think it's either next week or the week after. That's the audit training part 2. We're going to talk about how do you manage the audit, and how do you look at the audit report, how do you negotiate, what do you look at, and that part. Any simulation of video available, what all the LMS tools? No, we haven't done that yet, because you need to have anonymized data for that. So we have not had it. If anyone here is listening and you're an end customer and you allow us to run it, we might be able to record a video about it. Sibyl, yeah, well, you can. I think the best way, you can just contact us if you think that we can help. Visit our website, redresscompliance.com, and use the contact form. With that, let's start. Sorry for that commercial. And I'm going to talk about the audit process, the process itself. From Oracle's point of view, Oracle will send a notification letter to its end customer, or if there's a partner involved, the GP partners, that will be noted in the notification letter. I would say if there's a party involved, you should be reviewing your audit clause to determine if you want to have Oracle auditing you directly, or if you want to have a software reseller that is only paid by Oracle for license shortfalls. It will send an email to the CFO or CIO, often both, and if they have the names, and it will notify them that Oracle wants to exercise its audit right and audit that end customer. Generally, what happens is that if they should be waiting 45 days before they reach out and ask, have you received the letter? But if you are contacted by Oracle before 45 days, I would be very worried, because that indicates that Oracle have a strong suspicion, perhaps evidence, that you're out of compliance, and that the sales team or the sales managers or the sales director simply have told Oracle audit team, we want to audit this customer, we have this suspicion or this proof. But generally, if you haven't heard back from Oracle after 45 days, most likely you are just on a, what do you call it, ghost chase, where Oracle doesn't really suspect either way. They're obviously looking at the license inventory. They are, if you have old license metrics, obviously that might have been the reason why you are audited, but you might be just one of 100 customers that they targeted because you have that old license metric. Morten talked about that. For example, if you have Oracle EBS, and if you don't have full use licenses for technology products, which is Oracle WebLogic, Winter Application Suite, or Oracle Database Enterprise Edition, if you don't have full use licenses for those products, Oracle is constantly auditing companies like that. They've had a lot of luck, because there's when you buy Oracle e-Business Suite, you get the restricted use database and middleware under Oracle e-Business Suite, but the limitations and the restrictions are so tight that I don't think any company in the world can use the restricted licenses and not be forced to buy full use licenses. What Oracle wants to do, let's say that we are an end customer here and we're waiting the 45 days. They want to have a kickoff together with the end customer, and they want to talk about, okay, what is the scope of the audit? And generally, that is sometimes mentioned in the audit letter. If it's not mentioned in audit letter, you should be asking Oracle which are the products they want to audit, because you might be an Oracle applications customer, you might be a technology customer, and perhaps they just want to audit one product. And if you know that they only want to audit one product, for example, Oracle applications, well, then it might indicate that they suspect an out of compliance with Oracle application. And Morten talked about the reasons. If you made any merger and acquisitions, integrations, could be some contractual limitation in your contract that almost certainly makes you out of compliance with your software. But they want to have a kickoff together with you, and they want to have agree on the timeline. When are you going to run the Oracle audit script? When are you going to supply Oracle with information? They are using an audit self-service portal where you download the script from Oracle and are supposed to uploading the script output. You're supposed to be filling in an Oracle server worksheet, answering questions to them as well in a questionnaire. And that is Oracle's approach. What they do is that when you have uploaded data to them, they will review the script output. They will review the questionnaire that you filled in. They might, or they often will, come back and ask for clarification on the questions. It might be that you need to rerun the script because there might have been some error in the script output. And it generally takes Oracle 3 to 5 weeks to analyze the data. But obviously, if you're a very big customer, it might take longer. I've seen Oracle license audits can be completed in 2 months. Other audits have taken years to complete. And I think that is why I think Oracle is focusing more on smaller customers, because they can do more audits, while if they audit a big company, It's a lot of work, and it might not necessarily mean that the large company is out of compliance with Oracle. Because if you're just out of compliance with Oracle for 1 or 2 servers, we could be talking about a $1 or $2 million. And it could be the same amount if you're auditing a large company, and it could be that takes 2 years to complete, but gives you the same end result from a small as it would from a small company. They will then issue a draft report, and they call that a preliminary report. They send it to you, and they ask you, do you agree with the findings or not? And that's really it. And what they don't tell the customer directly is, please review them and see if we have any errors or wrong assumptions. But that's really what the end customer should be doing. They should be reviewing the preliminary report for errors and assumptions. And in order to do that, you need to have deep Oracle licensing expertise. How else would you understand if Oracle have made errors or assumptions? Oracle wants you to often negotiate based on this preliminary report. As soon as you say you accept it, Oracle wants you to negotiate to make a purchase. And if you do that, for example, a good example is that if you're using Oracle in VMware and you might have a compliance gap of $100 million, they often say, please, let's negotiate a deal here for 10 million. We're willing to let you reconfigure your IT infrastructure. So you make that purchase of 10 million and you reconfigure your IT infrastructure. And then when everything is reconfigured, Oracle confirms it, and then they will issue a final report, and often with no non-compliance findings. But if you refuse to negotiate, make a purchase, and settle the under licensing that Oracle have found, they will issue a final report. And that final report, then you have 30 days to purchase. If not, Oracle have a compliance policy that says that they have the right to terminate your licenses and support, which is this phase. Here is an example of an Oracle audit letter that we found online. We're going to share this PowerPoint in the LinkedIn event group, but I can read it here. The License Management Services Group is responsible for ensuring that our customers' use of Oracle software is legal and in accordance with the terms and conditions specified in our software agreement. Okay, sounds good. As a standard practice, a number of our customers are reviewed on a periodic basis to ensure a balanced verification is made of Oracle customer base. Under the right contained in our software agreement, which is the Oracle OMA, I am writing to inform you that blah, blah, blah has been selected for our review, and your account manager has been notified accordingly. Sure, they notified the account manager, but the account manager has nominated this customer for audit. Oracle is not auditing any customer unless they have asked the account manager, is there anything preventing us from auditing this customer? Preventing is usually if the account manager thinks that you're going to buy something from them, then they don't want to have an audit. The review will verify your current licensing position and establish a baseline of your current usage. The objective of the review is to check your licensing is adequate for your current use of Oracle software. At the end of the review, you will be provided with a report documenting your current compliance position with your agreements and be notified of any compliance matters that require your attention. Specifically, the review process will agree the licenses which you currently hold. Okay, so you agree very upfront that, okay, these are the licenses that you own. And this is discussed in the kickoff meeting. Determine the deployment and measure of Oracle programs across your organization. Yes, that's the Oracle running scripts. Establish the process if required for ensuring license compliance. Yeah, oh, okay. And basically, it's how do you become compliant with Oracle, which is purchasing licenses if you're missing. Document all the findings above. Yes, it will be documented in the Oracle preliminary report and the final report. And then it says here, to start the process, please confirm the name and contact details of a license review coordinator at blah, 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 within the next 10 days. So for me, that's where I'm wondering, within the next 10 days, but that, okay, we haven't seen the this specific customer's contract and the OMA, but that's not really what's in the contract. And I would, if I would be advising this customer here, I would say, well, ignore that 10 days, because we need to look at the Oracle Audit Clause in the OMA to determine how many days before you actually need to cooperate. I would indicate maybe they want to rush this and they suspect there's an out of compliant with this specific customer. At the end here, I would note finally that License Management Services Group is an impartial team within Oracle Finance Organization with the sole remit to validate compliance. Well, that's not really true, because if you see Oracle License Management job ads, you can see that one of their goals is to bring revenue to Oracle. So so it's not only about validating compliance. If you have this letter, what should be the first steps? I would wait 45 days. I would not have any contact with Oracle. If Oracle contacts you, I would simply say, yes, we have the letter, we're looking into it, and we will reply within the contractual time frame. But if, let's say that you have these 45 days, things to think about at the end of that is that you can negotiate the scope. Oracle might want to do an audit of all your products or all your legal entities, but you can actually negotiate which products are part of the scope, which legal entities are part of the scope. For example, let's say that you're a global company, you might have an Africa business unit, or in South America, where perhaps you already know that it's very difficult to communicate or even get the required data. If you want to make us, I assume that nobody wants to spend time working on license audits, that there's better things to do in our job. And I would think, okay, if there's a part of my company structure that it is very difficult for me to get data, I might want to exclude that, because then the audit's going to be easier to manage and going to be over quicker. But it might also be that you have a very good confidence in your licensing when it comes to technology products, but you don't know Oracle Siebel, for example, or Oracle applications, and then you might think, okay, well, this is a risk area. I want to negotiate away this product from the audit scope. These are important considerations, and it's important to do that, to negotiate the scope of the audit, so that Oracle cannot later let's include this product, and you're stuck in this audit for months. If I can see if there's a question here. So Claudio, sorry, but when you say, when we can negotiate, you refer after receiving the audit. Yes, when you receive the audit notification, you can negotiate the scope of the audit, which products, which legal entities. Yes, obviously it requires negotiation, but you can negotiate which products are part of the audit and which legal entities. Castor is wondering what would be argument to exclude, for example, Siebel. You can use different examples. For example, that you have sensitive data there, that someone have to go on site. It might be that you're making changes to the environment, and that you will the licensing would be different. You need to make up a good reason why you want to exclude them. You want to agree with Oracle as well at this time. What are the steps? What data are you going to be sharing with Oracle? How is it collected? Are they going to come on site to review the data? Because at least I'm a person who don't want to waste my time doing things that makes no sense. Oracle license audit maybe doesn't make much sense for you as a customer, but I would try to limit or agree on the scope, but also agree on the approach and agree on the timelines where Oracle is supposed to be, okay, we're giving you all this data now, or when are you going to be finished with the audit? Because you want to be able to plan your time as well ahead. And you want to know, okay, when is this audit going to be completed? If you're not ready for the Oracle audit, you can delay the audit. When I was at Oracle, there were customers who delayed audits for up to 1 year. Obviously, it's easier to delay an audit where you're just one of 100 companies that Oracle pull out in a list and using by filters, right? And it's more difficult to delay an audit where Oracle have you in the crosshairs and there's a sales team or sales management that are saying, no, you cannot delay the audit. But in the Oracle Audit Clause, it says that the audit shall not unreasonably interfere with your normal business operations. That's the standard language in the Oracle Audit Clause. And when you have that vague clause, there's room to delay the audit. And here's a few reasons to things that you can tell Oracle. Say that you're in the middle of an IT change, that you don't have the time to do an audit. It might be that you need to wait. You tell them that your legal is reviewing the audit notification. You might say that you have 3 or 4 different audits already. Can we wait with the audit? Usually, Oracle can wait with the audit or delay it, but they cannot cancel it very easily. If they're going to cancel the audit, they have to have highest approval at Oracle, and it's quite a process and not easy to do, because it's an official communication. If they send an audit notification, it's an official communication from Oracle to your company. Another thing, for example, I like to it's a good trick. So after the 45 days when you had the letter from Oracle, is that you send them a letter. Yes, we acknowledge the letter, and we look forward to the next step. So after 45 days, you send an email, and then Oracle wants to have a meeting, and you find a time maybe 2 weeks later. You add another 14 days to the 45, and you're up to 60 days. And when you get on a meeting, Oracle 100% have done a kickoff presentation where they want to go over the timeline and everything else. You should simply say at that time, sorry, we're not going to discuss anything right now. Here's our corporate NDA. We would like to have that signed. Oracle will obviously say that no, but we already have a non-disclosure clause in the Oracle OMA. But you should say no, but it doesn't fulfill the requirements, and we want you to sign our company NDA. That will give you another few weeks. So you can see that there are different tricks that you can use to delay the audit, and I'm going to explain in a while why you want to delay the audit. This is, well, it's a basic high-level overview of how we are helping companies, and you can take this plan and do it yourself, or you can help customers if you're a consultant. You have the 45 days notification. Well, here says read is compliance engaged, but it can be you as well. And the objective, obviously, is to delay. Why do you want to delay? Well, because you want to understand why is Oracle auditing you. You should assume that there is a big license gap here. I would say almost every company in the world is out of compliance with Oracle software. If we've done 100 Oracle licensing reviews, I think maybe one company is actually compliant with the Oracle software, and it just shows you the difficulty and complexity of staying compliant with Oracle. You should be reviewing your contracts. You should be understanding what is your real Oracle usage and perform a risk analysis. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this today. And you don't have to run Oracle Audit scripts and things like this. There's things that you can actually do without having that expertise. And because then you can offer some optimization guidance, for example, risk reduction, optimization, and even purchase something from Oracle before the audit begins. But most likely your audit compliance and will be doing some technical activities to remediate that, and then you will either purchase licenses from Oracle, either that's a term usage for historical usage or it's going forward usage. And here is the audit phase 2. So everything that we talked about today, all the delay tactics and things like this, you want to buy yourself time to do this. You want to buy yourself time to make sure that you are not $500 million out of compliance, but maybe you're 1 or 2, or even lower than that, because obviously it's the virtualization and a few other things that are causing major out of compliance. But those things are items that you want to address before the Oracle audit begins. So I've told you, well, you have 45 days, and then you can delay it even more. You can, with the NDA, you probably have at least 3 months here to work on these things, and then you start the audit here. Let me see if there's any questions. This is a very good point from Andrew. Always remember that the goal of the audit is to generate revenue for Oracle. So check Oracle financial calendar. Sales will want to close before end of Q4, delayed past that date to reduce pressure. Yeah, so we actually were contacted by a few companies that all got their audit or their report in early April. And Oracle's financial year ends at the end of May, but they have internal deadlines, so they need to close any transactions before mid-May, most of them anyway. Yeah, so Oracle's audits are usually aligned with their financial quarters. And if you suddenly are engaged in an Oracle audit, find out when is the Oracle's next quarter end beginning, because most likely you will get an audit report at least 1 month before the Oracle's financial year or each quarter is ending, because then they have 30 days to settle or for you to purchase the licenses that are missing. Here we have a question. Why does Oracle want to start the audit so quick? A, they're helpful and efficient, or is it B, Oracle don't want you to be able to take any remediation activities? Let's see if there's anyone still here, or is it this 15-second lag? I think it might be. Exactly. Oracle is not stupid. They know this is going on, that companies are reconfiguring or checking the licenses before the audit begins. What is the name of Oracle's in-house data measurement tool? Is it A, Flexera, or is it B, LMS collection tool? I think here everybody we should, if we had a percentage here, we should have probably 100% correct here, I hope. So the answer is the B, it's LMS collection tool. Can you refuse to run Oracle provided scripts? Is it A, no, it's in the contract that I must cooperate, Or is it B, maybe review your contract language and understand how much you need to cooperate? And there was a question here in the chat about this, and this in the old contracts, there's nothing talking about running Oracle data measurement scripts. Nothing is mentioned. The advice is it's up to everyone to decide how much you want to cooperate with Oracle in the audit. If you say no, they can ask you why. Why don't you want to run our scripts? If you say no, make sure that you have your management backing you and that you have a good reasoning for not running it. If you have signed a new OMA where it says you shall run the Oracle data measurement script, I think you have a harder time saying no to running them. It's not impossible, but you have a harder time saying no. So the correct answer here is B. Review your contract language in the OMA. Does it mention anything about running audit script? Some customers have actually agreed that saying, yes, we will run it. If you have an Oracle verified SAM tool, what does it mean? It means Oracle accept the data collection, the script output, or is it B, Oracle accept the OSV that the tool creates and you can hand it to Oracle? I think there's a spelling error, but so what it means to be Oracle verified is that all Oracle verified tool vendors are given version of Oracle scripts that the verified tool vendors are running on all the servers of their end customers. That output is very, very similar to what Oracle's LMS collection tool output looks like. It's almost the same, it's just maybe a different format. What Oracle is done saying that if you don't want to run the Oracle LMS collection tool, they're going to tell you, okay, you have Flexera. Okay, please give us your OSW, but please also give us your output file underneath the Flexera tool. And that's, you might think, yeah, that's great because the OSV shows that I'm 100% compliant with Oracle. Well, not necessarily, because what the problem is that the tool vendor is not always correct in interpreting the script output data. That's really what it means to be verified. And as I said in the chat earlier, I think it's great to be like that because then you don't need to, let's say we are an expert consultant firm, we don't need to tell you, please run it on every server. You already have it there, and we just say, please give it to us, and we can tell you how many licenses you need. And we don't ask for the OSW or what Flexera is showing you. We just say, give us the output, and we can look at that. That's really what it means. And I would not recommend anyone who have bought a verified SAM tool to just say, okay, dear Oracle, please take my OSW and please take the script output. That's very risky. Yeah. Oh, I already took this question, so I will move on. Where do you begin? You begin by, if you have the audit letter from Oracle, you start by collecting all your license entitlements. Contracts, with that, it's the Oracle ordering documents. The Oracle ordering documents, if you have attended our previous training, that is where the license terms are. That is where the limited use, the restricted use, Oracle contracts often have these products can only be used for this application, for example. That's why you want to have the Oracle ordering documents to review that. Because if you don't have that and Oracle have them, and Oracle might be sitting and reviewing them, they're going to have an advantage. You want to make sure that you have the same information as Oracle has. If you don't have the contracts, which is quite common, if you don't have them, this is after 45 days, I would send an email to Oracle. We see that you have want to audit us, but we want to review your right to audit us. So please send us all your Oracle ordering documents and OMAs. And they might send you just the OMA, but ask for the Oracle ordering documents anyway. If you don't have it, you might, let's say that you want to wait, you want to start working on this and not wait 45 days. Have a look at the latest maintenance renewal. That should contain at least quantities and products that you own on license. You might have licenses that are unsupported. Also, amendments is important because amendments constitute license rights. So it could be an amendment about license assignment. It could be an amendment about Oracle licensing in VMware. Everything is important. If you have terminated licenses, it's important to have that. Yeah, license assignments. If you have emails from anyone at Oracle, really, but specifically sales people at Oracle saying something about licensing, they do not constitute the right. And an email is not sufficient to base a licensing position upon. Sure, if you have an email from someone at Oracle saying you could do something, it's going to help you in a negotiation, but it's not going to say, yes, it's okay, I can license this server without a contract. If Oracle is promising you something, and you should always want to have an amendment from Oracle, or at least some sort of legal letter from Oracle saying that you have this right. What do we look for in the Oracle ordering documents? Customer definitions, majority-owned subsidiaries. It might be limitation to different entities, and you're using the software across other entities. Could it be other customizations when it comes to the definition and amendments? The customer definition, as well as the territory rights, is the two most important contract clauses. And if I would be working as an end customer, these are the things I would like. Okay, the number one things. Okay, customer definition and territory rights. Where are we using and where have we deployed Oracle software? Because it might fully well be that you have a territory right, which is only UK. It says usage right and deployment rights are only the UK, but your account rep might have spoken with someone in your company, and they're saying, no, but this is being used across the world for all our entities. And that could actually be the reason why you're audited. Because Oracle have been told secondhand that you're using Oracle software in across the world when you don't have the right to do that. There's a amendment to the contract. So the Oracle ordering document is the contract, Castor. Sorry for not being clear about that. My third step is to look at, and it's always in the Oracle ordering document, and it's often on the D, other, and it says limited for certain processes, or limited for certain applications, or limited licenses for test and development, or disaster recovery. No, you name it. It can be anything here. Oracle loves customizations in their contracts. So, and this can also be a reason why you're being audited by Oracle. Imagine that it says that can only be used for this financial application, and you bought Oracle WebLogic. And then the account rep is speaking with someone in your business, or even speaking with you if you are not on top of this. And you'll ask, but what are you using the WebLogic licenses for? And if you tell them, but we're using them for this procurement application or something that's not in the contract, the account rep at Oracle might just go and look at the contract. But it's not really allowed. And then he go and tells Oracle LMS, we need to audit this customer. That has happened 1,000 times. Which is important to have a look at in your contract, and if you're actually abiding by them. Because you don't want Oracle to have this information, and you don't when there's an audit. License metrics definitions, also important to look at. Is it a standard metric or negotiated? Oracle can I often say Oracle is willing to offer you anything if you offer them money, and that includes their license definitions. You can have your own license definition if you pay them enough money. But also you want to know when did you make the purchase, because license definitions cannot have also changed over time as Oracle have changed their licensing policies. A good for example, we used one example today, which is the OMA. You have older licenses and then you have new licenses. Maybe the audit clause doesn't apply for all of them, depending on should you use the new audit clause for every environment, or is there a mix? Same when licensing Oracle in Azure and AWS, the licensing changes have changed. The process of the definition have changed as well. So you want to know when you purchased the Oracle software licenses, because it could be a point where you either have to purchase licenses for 200,000 or you don't have to purchase it. It's an important detail to know. Old license metrics, high risk of non-compliance and a high risk of audit selection. Sometimes when I'm helping a company with an Oracle license audit and we sign a contract and they give me all their license entitlement, sometimes I can just, okay, obviously I don't know for certain why they've been audited, but if this is, for example, you have lots of old license metrics, could be a very likely reason why you've been audited by Oracle. So we're going to talk about 4 main risk areas. I'm not going to go into detail on this. We can save it, but we're going to talk about it in session 7, where we're talking about Oracle licensing in VMware, Hyper-V, Solaris, IBM LPAR. That's Morten's specialty topic. And but obviously, first step, let's say you have an Oracle audit, first check around, and you don't need to have ability to analyze Oracle audit script or be an expert in Oracle licensing to understand, okay, do we have Oracle and VMware? Okay, if we have, why? Do we have an amendment from Oracle? Have we actually understood the amendment correctly from Oracle? Have we made changes to if we have an amendment from Oracle to allow us to run Oracle and VMware, but have we made changes to our VMware environment since we signed that amendment? This should be the #1 step to take, because if you are, by mistake, deploying some Oracle software in VMware, or even Hyper-V or any types of virtualization, you might be able to just, okay, we want to shift this to a physical server to make sure that we're correctly licensed. In most cases, you are correctly licensed if you just put it on a correct server, or if you just configure IBM LPAR correctly, or you might be running Oracle Solaris but haven't really configured the zones correctly. So if Oracle would do the audit, they would say you need license the whole server, but if you just make some configuration on the zones, you only need to license part of it. This should be the first part anyone should take. Oracle applications. This is quite easy as well, because at least on a high level, you just look at, okay, what do we have as a license metric? If this is employees, okay, how many employees do we have in a company? Okay, that's one point. But then you also check, okay, when was the last time we actually cleaned up or end dated employees that left their company? It's, I would say, in every case, we help companies with Oracle CBEL, Oracle EBS. Companies have not deleted users that left the company or end dated them. They have users that haven't logged into EBS and CBEL for 5 years. Things at least that you can take without being an Oracle license expert or being able to analyze scripts. We talked a bit about scripts. There's a specific script for Oracle EBS. There's a specific script for Oracle CBEL. So not even I can analyze those scripts. It's very few people in the world who can do that. So it requires unique expertise. There's also professional user or external professional user. That's if you have Oracle EBS, Oracle EBS have changed their license definition, license metrics many times. and it's quite easy to be out of compliance as you grow your EBS usage or something has changed. Perhaps even checked if you have a revenue metric. So some Oracle products are licensed based on metrics. Make sure that you haven't exceeded your revenue metric. And then the deep analysis, which is really needed. If you're really audited by Oracle, EBS, or CBAL, you need to get help on that. I think I'm not even going to try to be an expert in this area because it's going to take years and years to be good enough so that my result would stand in an Oracle license audit. I don't want to be helping companies and say, I can do this, and when then Oracle is going to verify my results afterwards. That's why we have an Oracle, EBS, and CBAL expert just for those products. Features inside of the database. You might not be able to check this if you're not an Oracle, if you don't have the ability to analyze Oracle scripts. But you might want to be asking your DBA team, have we used any database options? Here's the thing, they might say we haven't, and then they have. So it's, but it's probably along with VMware and misunderstanding Oracle's virtualization policies for other virtualization technologies, this is where companies are out of compliance with Oracle. 4 area, disaster recovery. Have you really understood the standby and licensing rule? I think it's quite easy, but it took me many years to actually understand it. And I know people are actually, even people who are working with Oracle licensing still have to look and figure out, does this standby environment need to have a license or not? Test and development, are all environment licensed? How have you licensed it? Have you licensed per user or CPU? Hardware as well. Have you counted correctly? Have you applied the right core factor table and things like this? These are things that you might be able to do on a high level, but if you're audited by Oracle, I would recommend you get help. 3 most common common errors companies make during audits, and that is no negotiation of the audit scope. I think that's people might not know that you can negotiate the products that the vendor wants to audit. I guess this is a part of the culture where you work, where you're based, but necessarily you don't have to do everything that Oracle asked them to do. Have a look at your audit clause and determine how much you want to cooperate. And then thirdly, we're going to talk about that in 2 weeks, which is they accept the Oracle findings and start negotiating the audit report based on Oracle findings when they should be reviewing the report for errors and wrong assumptions are based on Oracle. In every report, we see this. In every report, I haven't seen a single audit report that's been correct. And well, you can either contact experts, or you can start reading or boost your knowledge, articles, blogs, videos, whatever. Let me see if there's any questions. Could you spend a few words on Graal as well? So, Madalena, you have to explain a bit more in the chat, and I can answer that question. Can you negotiate the scope of an audit? Is it A, no, or is it B? Yes, you can negotiate both the products and the legal entities. What's the correct answer here? Can you negotiate the scope of an audit? The correct answer is B. Yes, you can, both the products and the legal entities. I'm not saying that you were going to have 100% success, but at least you can try. if you have an OMA from 2018, does it include any contract language to run Oracle Audit scripts? Is it A, yes it does, or no, it does not? And the correct answer is no, it does not, because I think that change was in 2019, if I'm correct. Obviously, you need to check your audit clause, because it might have. You might have had the IT procurement person who agreed to that, and because I've actually seen it, that all the contracts have it, but it's 1 in 1,000, I would say. When should you let Oracle start the audit? Is it A, as soon as they want to kick off the audit, or is it B, wait until you've done a review of licensing and possible remediation, 45 days plus? I hope everyone here knows the answer. It is B, wait until you've done a review of your licensing and possible remediation, 45 days plus. And you can actually delay this for, as I said, years actually. What should you primarily look at in your contracts? Is it A, only products, metrics, and quantities? Or is it B, product, metrics, quantities, customer definition, territory, or other limited use clauses? The correct answer is, in the Oracle ordering document, you look for product, metrics, quantities, customer definition, territory, and limited use clauses. A lot of the B answers here, so B is correct. You have an email from an Oracle sales rep saying it's okay to license with standard edition, but in reality you actually have enterprise edition. But LMS says that you are non-compliant. Is the email a get out of jail free card? Is it A, I don't need to buy licenses? The email that you have from a sales rep here gives you carte blanche. Or is it B, no, an email has no contractual value, but it can be used as a negotiation leverage to avoid paying full price? The correct answer is B. It's quite common that companies have an email from some account manager or someone at Oracle saying, yes, you can license it this way. And it's being, if you have saved it and there's an audit, it's not proof of license. It's not a contractual agreement, but you can use it as a way to get better discount for solving the other compliance. Any questions? This is it for today. I thought that it would be much shorter today, but I can see we have 1 hour 55 minutes here.
Well, at least we are not running over.
It's good. It's good. I think there's a 10-second here delay. Okay. Claudia, you have a question here regarding the exam, Martin.
Go for it.
Yeah. Oh, exam code.
Yes, we probably gonna generate a specific code where you log in, so we can track each and everyone's usage. So we're gonna do a small video, so everybody knows exactly what they need to do, and so it runs very smoothly. We have the system up and running. Everything is done before, so all that is done. We just want to make sure that everybody, get into the exam as comfortable and as easy as possible. So we're going to make a video for that. So don't worry about it. You're all going to have a fair chance to get the exam, go in and answer all the questions and all that, and get the diploma and all that.
Okay, great. Sorry, but I was playing around with it. Octavio, yeah, we will upload the presentation to the LinkedIn group. It's the best way for everybody to get the information. Vinaya, we're going to talk about Oracle licensing and VMware in session 7. And then we have here, I'm not able to get the presentations. Okay, let me share with you the link here to the, here we go. Check in the chat now, Zubair. That's where you need to press attend, and then you can see all the replays and short videos and things like this. And all the presentations as well. When is the next session, Martin?
It's next week.
Oh, is it next week?
I believe so, yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. Because when I scheduled it, I knew it was like a 1 week between one of them. So, okay. Yeah, well, we were going to talk about Oracle's cloud contracts, not indeed Oracle Software as a Service contracts, and that will be in session 7 as well. Okay, guys, everybody. So we see you in 2 weeks. We're gonna leave you. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. We're gonna leave you with our favorite video. See you all soon.
We started working with Oracle licensing over 15 years ago, and we've always been passionate about our work with licensing and contracts. Back when we started working at Oracle, we realized very quickly that Oracle had an advantage. They knew all the contracts and licensing rules, all while its customers were in a disadvantage with limited access to the very same information. We want to level the playing field by changing that. We often get asked, why do you share? Our philosophy is pretty simple, and it's always been, if you do good things will happen. To us, there are 2 groups of people out there. One group who will watch our videos, attend our training, and use that knowledge to better manage their Oracle software, and that's great. But there will also be people who need our Oracle licensing expertise. It's a win-win.
Oracle licensing is challenging and difficult. Almost no company in the world is able to stay compliant with their Oracle software licenses. But there are a few companies out there that have succeeded in remaining compliant with Oracle. We are obsessed with finding those companies, speak with them to understand how were they successful, and then we want to teach it to everybody else. The challenge with learning about Oracle licensing has always been that the few who had the knowledge did not want to share it with others. We want to be different. We want to share knowledge that we have, whatever knowledge that we gain, so that others can benefit from this knowledge as well. That is our mission.